Now, Odie and I will continue working closely with partners across the US government to identify exactly where these labs are and what pathogens they contain to end dangerous gain-of-function research.
Here's a video I did. I haven't seen this recently. This is from, by the way, March 8th, 2022, 4 years ago.
One of the things that people were talking about way back on February 24th, which seems like eons ago when Russia first invaded, was the potential that they were targeting biolabs that were supported by the United States and Ukraine. People said that this was Russian disinformation and that Russia had been spreading this since 2018. I went to vaunted left-wing fact-checker / propagandist Snopes to see what they said about this. They claimed that this was not only Russian disinformation that's been spread since 2018, but that it's been picking up. And the idea that there are biolabs there that are being funded by the United States and doing anything nefarious is ridiculous. They actually cited out one person, whose name I'll pick below, I believe it's War Clandestine, who was someone on Twitter that talked about this possibility. Now, I don't think Clandestine was 100% accurate in everything he said. He could be, he could not be, I don't know. But it seems that his channel was removed, and Snopes, certainly around this time, targeted him for spreading this alleged Russian disinformation. Anyways, we looked at that and said, it's Russian disinformation, and that was the end of it. Now, what about that was Russian disinformation? Well, this is how this sort of thing goes. It could be that some of that's not proven true, and so therefore you could say, well, that's not true, so it must be Russian disinformation. But maybe huge parts of what was being said was true. But the feeling you got from listening to Snopes, USA Today, and other places fact check and say that this wasn't accurate was that there's no biolabs in Ukraine, and certainly the United States had nothing to do with them, and there'd be no reason for Russia to be targeting them anyways. Now fast forward today to Under Secretary of State Victoria Nuland. You might remember Nuland. She's a person who was basically instrumental in a color revolution or a sort of coup, soft coup, that occurred in Ukraine in 2014, where she's on audio admitting that her role as part of the Obama State Department was picking out who the new leader of Ukraine should be after they helped oust Yanukovych, who was seen as the pro-Russian president. Wouldn't it be nice for the people of Ukraine to have a president that looked after their own interests first instead of Russia or the United States? But I digress. Anyways, that's maybe where you would remember her name from. She was testifying in front of the Senate and Marco Rubio today, and she did in fact mention that there are biolabs in Ukraine, and that it appears that Russia seems to be targeting them, and that the United States is actively working with the government of Ukraine to be able to help defend or see what they could do about Russia not exploiting those bioweapon labs. She also said if there's a bio attack, Marco Rubio cued her to saying this. She assures us it wouldn't be Ukraine. It would absolutely be Russia that did that. Now, there's two things to say about this. The first is kind of the reason for doing the video, which is, I thought this was all Russian disinformation. They'll gaslight you and say, oh, no, we were saying it was disinformation, that the initial attack was targeted against these facilities, but it was always a possibility that Russia would go after these facilities. That's not the impression they gave. If we had serious media people, you wouldn't have to rely on people like random Twitter people to get stories like this and questions like this, because the media should be investigating these sorts of things. But we don't have a media. We have propagandists, and it's always been like this. Remember, Russia disinformation was used right before the election when they said the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation and censored people from being able to talk about it. And then we found out months later, actually that story was accurate. Remember, they told us 50 intel agents wrote on and said, oh my goodness, this is all Russian disinformation. And then it turned out that was a lie. But it doesn't matter because, oh well, the election's over. They got what they wanted. The same thing's true here. They'll just say that you're spreading Russian disinformation, and when it comes to light, they just act like they never said it and said, yeah, okay, but still trust us on everything. The other thing I want to say real quick is that I'll post the link below where Russia and China have been accusing for a long time now the United States of developing bioweapons on their borders in places like Ukraine. Now, I can't prove that's happening. I don't know. But how would the United States feel if a hostile power, say North Korea, China, Russia, had biolabs stationed 50 miles off of the border of the United States and Mexico? I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Proton VPN. My audience knows I'm a huge tech boomer, and so I started using Proton VPN to stop with the constant tracking, and it's been a game changer. Proton VPN hides your IP from websites, advertisers, and the government, so you can access the web without being tracked. Proton VPN has a strict no logs policy that's been verified by independent security audits, and it has unlimited bandwidth even on the free option. Click the link in the description to try Proton VPN 100% free. It helps the show, and more importantly, it empowers you to take control of your internet privacy. That was 2022, that video. Victoria Nuland, like the day before, let it slip up that these biolabs existed.
Now, I've done debate after debate. It's difficult to find them because a lot of times it'll just be like a stream that someone will call in. I debated this guy, I'm Really Important. We talked about the biolab stuff. He said, nope, it's a bullshit. It's conspiracy theories. I said, what part of it is a conspiracy theory? What part of it's wrong? Or he said it was Russian disinformation. And he said, that doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it helps Russia. See, it was malinformation. But I debated a bunch of people on this. Now, the point I was making at the end of that video 4 years ago, what would the United States do if China had biolabs that were working on gain-of-function technology of all this serious shit? By the way, we'll get to exactly what Tulsi said. 50 miles off of our border in Mexico. What would we say? Would the United States government say, no problem, sounds good to me? Probably not. They'd probably say, that's unacceptable. Here's Tulsi Gabbard, the video she put out today on this, and then we'll go to the document.
After months of searching through intelligence community holdings and files, today I'm releasing new evidence of long-standing U.S. government funding of more than 120 biolabs in over 30 countries. Now, these biolabs include labs in places like Ukraine, which could be at risk of compromise due to the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. In fact, the intelligence community had previously warned that a U.S.-funded biolab in Ukraine likely housed dangerous pathogens and remained vulnerable to long-standing threats of Russian attack, seizure, or damage. Now, until now, evidence regarding the full existence and funding of these laboratories had been knowingly withheld from you, the American people. Many of these U.S. government-funded biolabs are currently or have previously engaged in research using hazardous and highly contagious pathogens, and in some cases included dangerous gain-of-function research with very little visibility or oversight. Now, President Trump clearly understands the serious threat dangerous gain-of-function research poses to the American people. And this is why he took decisive action over a year ago. On May 25th, 2025, he signed an executive order to end federal funding of gain-of-function research around the world. Here at ODNI, I issued new guidance to the intelligence community directing increased collection on these laboratories and facilities overseas. And we're already seeing the results of this increased collection. We're learning new details, for example, on clinical trials that are underway at these facilities and that are raising significant ethical, financial, and security concerns regarding the supposed public health initiatives and U.S. national security. Now, despite the obvious potential for catastrophic global impact that research on dangerous pathogens in biolabs can have, politicians and so-called health professionals like Dr. Fauci, as well as entities within the Biden administration's national security team, lied repeatedly to the American people about the existence of U.S.-funded and supported biolabs. Not only did they lie, they threatened those who attempted to expose the truth. So this release today breaks new ground, as the information surrounding the existence, history, locations, and funding of these U.S.-funded biolabs has been intentionally covered up by very powerful people who falsely claimed that these biolabs didn't exist. Now, they accuse anyone who says otherwise to be foreign assets and traitors to America. Now, ODNI will continue working closely with partners across the U.S. government to identify exactly where these labs are and what pathogens they contain to end dangerous gain-of-function research that threatens the health and well-being of the American people and people around the world.
Now, why would they lie? Why was it important to lie? Well, much like everything with COVID, because the reason that they're censoring you or that they're lying isn't because they're afraid you'll believe something that isn't true. It's because they don't want you to know the truth. So they censor you. Oh, he's spreading misinformation. They don't give a shit about that. So they wanted this censored, that people were talking about this, and they lied in an attempt to censor it and said it was just not true and it was Russian misinformation. Why? Because the American people that were being told that they basically had to lock down and put their lives on hold, and in many cases ruin people's lives, while simultaneously having to allow Black Americans and Black Lives Matter to fucking riot with impunity whenever they felt like it, those people might start to get pissed if they realize, wait a minute, you mean that the United States government's been funding the very shit that possibly led to what happened? Dr. Fauci damn well knew that they were funding not just the Wuhan lab, but all of these other gain-of-function things, even though they weren't supposed to be, all across the Eastern world. They knew it. And they knew the American people would be pissed. And then that might mean that Dr. Fauci didn't get to do his cool magazine covers and be a big celebrity. Power's intoxicating. Didn't want to give that up and instead go from the most important man in the country to the most hated man in the country. That'd be bad. So they lied. And it was blatant. It was obvious that these labs existed. You saw me talking about it in 2022. Do you think I have significant government connections? No, I was just reading. It was obvious that these labs existed. To the extent where they couldn't disprove that the labs existed, they would say, well, they're just there holding Cold War material. They're not actively researching or gain of function and stuff like that. And it turns out it was all bullshit. And the media went along with it, and the politicians went along. Where was the fucking media? Isn't that sort of their job? That's a pretty serious allegation. Why don't we get someone to look into that? I mean, the labs fucking exist. There's over 100 of them. CBS doesn't have a fucking budget to get someone on a plane? This is why no one trusts any of these institutions. Okay, the intel agents are lying to you. Bad enough. The politicians lied to you as well. We know that. They're politicians. That's what they do. The media's fucking lying to you. The academics are fucking lying to you. Everyone is. Here's the actual information that Tulsi released. We'll go through this to the best of our ability. Veterinary research facility in Kharkiv, ongoing target for Russian misinformation, other potential operations. The Institute for Experimental and Clinical Veterinary Medicine in Kharkiv probably houses at least some dangerous pathogens and almost certainly remains vulnerable to long-standing Russian information operations, seizure, or damage. Now, one, think about this. On one hand, it's like, would Russia be happy that this is 50 miles away from their border, this supposed veterinary clinic that has, well, you'll see the shit they have, like anthrax and other shit? No, they probably weren't happy. Second, now we have to worry about Russia getting their hands on this shit. Boy, it would have been quite embarrassing if they got their hands on shit that showed the U.S. had a hand in creating COVID, wouldn't it? That'd be a fucking disaster. Better go to war, motherfucker. I don't know if the United States had a hand in creating COVID, but at this point, it's most likely that they funded money that at least had a hand in it, and they're doing all sorts of other dangerous shit at the same time funding it, even if not COVID. The institute, which was founded in the 20s, may have had Soviet biological warfare ties, specializes in veterinary medicine, virology, and toxicology, and then blank, according to military reporting and Ukrainian documentation. IECVM may have directly or indirectly supported Soviet BW efforts. That's biological warfare. IECVM focused research on diagnostic and vaccines, and it's already been destroyed. As of the early 2010s, this place held hundreds of pathogens and was one of over 40 Ukrainian-owned and operated laboratories that received assistance under DoD's Biological Threat Reduction Program, according to publicly available info and blank reporting. Although the facility had some areas with modern equipment and infrastructure, the clinic, as recently as 2019, had some biosafety and biosecurity deficiencies, most notably in rooms handling contagious Brucella bacteria, according to reporting. We're working to better understand the current status of the pathogens and biosafety of this facility and other Ukrainian laboratories because recent reporting suggests laboratories were ordered to destroy holdings after Russia's invasion. Russia accused the U.S. of biological weapon work in a basement lab in the facility. They had anthrax, Brucella. The facility almost certainly will remain a target of Russian information operation, particularly narratives that focus on its zoonotic pathogen work, COVID, and will be vulnerable to potential Russian damage or seizure. And then a bunch of redacted information from 2012 indicates that at least this place's virology building has a basement level. Over 40 labs built and supported in Ukraine. Storage of biological weapon pathogens from the Soviet era. U.S. training for Ukrainian scientists to work in biocontainment, especially dangerous pathogen certification. Repository of biological weapons and disease-causing pathogens. Anthrax, malaria, tuberculosis, swine fever, Newcastle disease, MERS, SARS, Marburg, Ebola, Lassa, the plague, and Rickettsia. Here you can see. Now look right on the border here of Russia. Look how close some of these labs are, including the Kharkiv one that we just talked about. Example information, U.S. built the following labs. Kherson, total cost of the lab, $1.7 million and change. Here's the contractor team. And then it says permit for working on pathogens is listed as in progress on the Ukraine embassy site. The veterinary place we just talked about, $2.1 million. Permit working on pathogens listed as in progress. Here's one that was $3.5 million. Here's one that was $1.9 million. Ukrainian labs and their connections to the bioweapons industry. USDA, World Health Organization, Army Research, Food and Agriculture Organization, CDC, University of Alaska, Kansas State, University of New Mexico. The U.S. paid Ukrainian scientists to study the genome of highly pathogenic avian flu and other infectious viruses in biocontainment labs, which are also paid for by the U.S. government. What's wrong with having biolabs with biological weapons on the border of Russia? I bet they do the same. You don't think that Russia would see that as a provocation? Russia probably believes, probably correctly, that COVID was being monkeyed with in a lab. Then they look 50 miles from their border and say the United States, which funded the Wuhan lab, funding other labs. They didn't like that. They said, fuck all that. That's why the intel's saying that these labs are going to be targeted by Russia, because they're not happy. It's provocation. Yeah, I know there was Chinese labs in California, yeah? But that's because they've bought out part of our government. So our government's going to, if it was hostile and they weren't paying for our government, the U.S. would be pretty pissed. Now, as bad as this story is, when you take it in context with COVID and all the people that were involved in helping lead us through COVID were just fucking lying about this. They could have said this. Yeah, okay, there's those labs that has nothing to do with COVID. But they didn't. They were like, no, labs don't exist. The hell, they could have said we're not allowed to talk about it. That's what they could have said. But they knew that if the American people knew that the U.S. government was funding these unsecure labs that were working on things like weaponizing COVID vaccines, that would piss them off. So they lied. And our media lied. And they called you a conspiracy theorist. And that, to me, is almost as big of the story as the labs existing themselves. It's just another example of something that was most likely obvious, and they just gaslit you over and over and over. This shit happens so many. It's like the Hunter. By the way, the Bidens were invested in these labs, allegedly. Hunter Biden emails showed that Rosemont Seneca, the group he was working with, invested $500,000 in Metabiota, San Francisco company specializes in pathogen research. He had 13.4% stake in that bio research place. And then he introduced them to Burisma for a science project involving biolabs. Hunter Biden's old emails linked to Ukraine labs. This is from China Daily Global in 2022. The much scrutinized laptop of Hunter Biden includes emails that connect the U.S. president's son to biological laboratories in Ukraine, according to allegations by the Russian government in recent media reports. Moscow has claimed that secret American biological warfare labs in Ukraine were a justification for its military incursion into Eastern Europe later last month. On March 24th, the Kremlin alleged the labs produced biochemical weapons. An investment fund run by Hunter Biden funded research and the implementation of the United States military biological program. It's obvious that Joe Biden, as his father and head of state, was aware of the activity. Russia's State Duma Speaker, good Lord, Vyacheslav Volodin said, according to Russian media, Volodin called for U.S. congressional investigation and White House explanation. Incoming material allowed us to trace the interaction scheme between the U.S. government agencies and the Ukrainian biolab, Igor Kirilov, head of Russia's Radiation, Chemical, and Biological Defense Forces, said at a March 24th briefing. American intelligence officials had earlier dismissed Russia's claims as war propaganda, explaining Ukraine's network of biological labs researching pathogens was not secret and had publicly received funding from Washington. Russia's new claim, however, that Hunter Biden's investment fund was involved raising money for biolab projects in Ukraine is accurate, according to emails first obtained by the New York Post and initially reported by the Daily Mail of London on March 25th. Rosemont Seneca Technology Partners invested $500,000 in Metabiota, a pathogen research company headquartered in San Francisco, and raised millions more through firms that included Goldman Sachs, according to emails found on the computer, which was abandoned in the Wilmington, Delaware repair shop in April 2019. Rosemont Seneca is an investment firm based out of D.C. It was founded in 2009 by Hunter Biden, Christopher Hines, and Devin Archer. Christopher Hines, by the way, I believe is John Kerry's kid, or at least his wife's kid. Hines is the stepson of U.S. Secretary of State and Senator and current climate czar John Kerry. He's also the great-grandson of Henry Hines Jr., or Henry Hines, founder of the international food processing Heinz Ketchup. Archer is a businessman. We know who Devin Archer is, yeah. The Post reported on the laptop after it received data from computer from Rudy Giuliani. Post story was suppressed on social media and resulted in the newspaper's suspension by Twitter, which cited its hacked materials policy for not allowing it to be distributed. New York Times, in March 17 story, centered on federal tax investigation and Hunter Biden's dealings, reported that the emails from the laptop were authenticated. People familiar with the investigation said prosecutors examined the emails between Mr. Biden, Archer, and others about Burisma and foreign business activity. Those emails were obtained by the New York Times from a cache of files that appears to come from the laptop abandoned by Mr. Biden in the Delaware repair shop. The email and others were authenticated by people familiar with the investigation. Hunter Biden introduced Mayo Biota to officials at Burisma, the Ukrainian gas company, where he was a highly paid board member, for a science project involving biolabs in Ukraine, according to the emails. Metabiota said on its website it has over a decade of experience partnering with industry and governments worldwide to build resilience to epidemics and protect global public health. They've worked in Ukraine for Black and Viach, an American defense contractor with the military intelligence agency to build secure labs in Ukraine. Their then Vice President, Mary Gutierrez, wrote to Hunter Biden about geopolitical issues involving the company's research in the former Soviet Republic, Ukraine, in April 2014. Quote, as promised, I've attached the memo, which now provides an overview of Metabiota, our engagement in Ukraine. Now we can potentially leverage our team networks and concepts to assert Ukraine's cultural and economic independence from Russia and continue integration into Western society. Sam Faddis, former CIA officer who reviewed the laptop's emails, told the Daily Mail that the offer to help Ukraine's independence was unusual. Raises the question, what's the real purpose of this venture? It's very odd, he said. 4 days after Gutierrez's email, Burisma executive Pozarsky wrote to Hunter Biden about an, as you called, Science Ukraine project. As I understand, the Metabiota was a subcontract and principal contractor of the DoD, Department of Defense, and B&V, Black and Veatch. What kind of partnership are they looking for in Ukraine? The U.S. awarded $24 million to Metabiota later in 2014, with $307,000 allocated for Ukrainian research projects. The younger Biden, 52, boasted to investors that his company organized funding for Metabiota and helped get new customers, including government agencies, according to the emails. B&V had been commissioned in 2010 by U.S. Defense Threat Reduction Agency to build a lab in Odessa, Ukraine, to enhance the government's existing surveillance systems to detect, report, and respond to bioterrorism attacks, epidemics, and potential pandemics. The DoD position is there's nothing nefarious here. This is pandemic early warning research. We don't know for sure that's all that was going on. Hunter Biden remains under federal investigation. He denies it. There you go. It was all conspiracy theory, only it was true. So it turns out there are 34 labs in Ukraine and many others. Some of these labs that are dealing with this gain of function shit that we were told they weren't were getting paid $24 million by the U.S. government while they were working with Joe Biden, then Vice President's son, to get contracts in Ukraine. But it was all conspiracy. Now do you understand why the Biden administration had an incentive to say this is all bullshit? It's all bullshit. His son's directly connected. The Russian government is invading, saying they got these fucking labs with all this shit. Nuh-uh, that's not true. Yes, the president's son was involved in it. Nuh-uh, it's all a lie. Russian disinformation. Now, where was the media? They couldn't look into this? And by the way, what we'll be told is everybody already knew. These aren't news stories. Everybody knew. Fauci's pardon, Hunter's pardon. Don't worry. No one's going down for this. Not that they would have anyways. Everybody's greasy little fucking fingers is in it. So remember this. While you were locked down, they are living it up. They censored your ability to talk about COVID. They censored your ability to talk about the fucking emails in the first place. The Hunter Biden emails. They called you a liar. They said you were spreading Russian disinformation. When you talk about the laptop, they'll say, it was just Hunter Biden's dick pics. No, I don't give a shit about that. I never did. That's just them downplaying, gaslighting you once more. It's all so fucking tiresome. Why would Russia invade? It's just, and by the way, this is just one little part. Now, I'm not saying Russia was justified in their invasion. That's not what I'm saying. But as I said in that video way back from 4 years ago in 2022, we have to be honest. It doesn't mean that they were justified to do it, but we have to be honest and say, what did we do that helped lead to this outcome occurring? We kept fucking around. We kept expanding westward with NATO. We were pushing these biolabs right up to the fucking border of Russia. We're attacking Syria, which is Russia's ally. We're involved with fucking most likely a color revolution in 2014 to overthrow the government of Ukraine that was friendly with Russia and then became hostile to Russia. But hey, forget about all that. Just put a Ukrainian flag in your bio of your social media. That's what's important. And let's send a generation of young Ukrainian men to the fucking meat grinder. Shall we? Then we can feel good about ourselves. But whatever you do, don't question it. That would be bullshit. That would be insensitive. It's all conspiracy theories. Just fucking conspiracies. It's cool, though. Hunter Biden's out there now hamming it up on social media. Yuck, yuck, I was a drug addict. I was treated poorly. Ha ha. Now, we'll be told no one ever said they weren't labs, and this is a nothing burger. It doesn't show much. It's all just more of a conspiracy. Fuck those people. How many times are they gonna lie right to your face? It'll be just like my interactions with Destiny. Years and years of talking about how the Russia collusion shit was a hoax, and how they were illegally spying on Trump's team, and how it was corrupt. And then our last debate, he's like, of course it was, but it was a long time ago. I've always said that, he says. That's what the people who said, we always said there were these labs. That wasn't the issue. No one gives a shit. It's a long time ago anyways. But what about January 6th? That's the important shit. The big thing this week was, right, I love this. No one really said defund the police. We didn't push the trans shit. We didn't do that. No one really did that. But good on Tulsi. I know she's leaving to help deal with her husband's illness and everything. I always liked Tulsi. She's been maligned as a fucking Russia asset for years. And they're going to go, that's what the attack will be on her now. This is just to help Russia. I'm hearing rumors that RFK Jr. will be out soon. Hopefully he gets to release something that he was concerned about on his way out. Don't forget, U.S. slams Kremlin claims of bioweapons labs in Ukraine. Yeah, I bet. My son didn't do that. By the way, that's one of the dirty little secrets that you're going to see with Hunter Biden and Burisma and shit. That he was doing shit that the government was kind of like, it's sort of an asset for us, even if not officially.